On the outer rim trading station of Velcara 9, nobody paid attention to the quiet human woman sitting alone in the corner of the cantina. She wore a simple traveler's jacket, sipped a lukewarm drink, and kept her eyes down, minding her own business. Her name was Dana Kessler, and to every alien in that room, she looked like nothing more than a harmless tourist, maybe a low-level cargo runner passing through. But do you know what happens when a species judges a book by its cover in a galaxy full of secrets? Sometimes that cover is the last thing they ever misjudge. The cantina was run by a Threll trader named Voss Cadden, a heavyset alien with 3 eyes and a reputation for skimming credits off every deal that passed through his station. Velcara 9 wasn't policed by any major empire. It was neutral territory, which meant it was also lawless territory. And lawless territory always attracts predators. 3 Brawn mercenaries walked in that evening, their armor scuffed from recent fighting, their eyes scanning the room for easy targets. Brawn were known throughout the galaxy for one thing: they respected strength and nothing else. To them, weakness wasn't just an opportunity. It was an invitation. Their leader, a scarred Brawn named Ruskav, spotted Dana sitting alone and grinned at his companions. "Human," he said loudly enough for the whole cantina to hear. "Aren't you supposed to be extinct by now?" The room went quiet with anticipation, the kind of quiet that comes right before something ugly. Velcara 9 had seen its share of violence over the years. It was the kind of station where disputes were settled quickly and rarely reported, where security response times were slow enough that most conflicts resolved themselves long before anyone official arrived. Regulars in the cantina had learned to recognize the signs of trouble the moment they walked in, and every instinct in the room was telling them this was about to be one of those nights. Dana didn't even look up from her drink, and that, more than anything, is what should have warned them. Do you know what it means when someone doesn't react to a threat at all? Doesn't mean they didn't hear you. It means they've already decided you're not worth reacting to yet. Ruskav didn't like being ignored. He crossed the room in 3 heavy strides and slammed his fist on her table, rattling her glass. "I'm talking to you," he snarled. Dana finally looked up, her expression calm, almost bored. "I heard you," she said. "I just didn't think you were worth answering." A few patrons at nearby tables suddenly found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. Chairs scraped. Drinks were abandoned mid-sip, because everyone in that room knew exactly how this kind of scene usually ended for the smaller, quieter party. Ruskav laughed, a harsh grating sound, and grabbed Dana by the collar of her jacket, hauling her up out of her seat. That's when his eyes landed on her forearm. And that's when everything changed. Wrapped around Dana's left forearm was a tattoo, the image of a tiger, inked in sharp black lines, its eyes rendered in a striking amber color that seemed to catch the cantina's dim lighting. To Ruskav, it was just decoration, piece of art, nothing more. But one of his companions, a younger Brawn named Threx, went pale the instant he saw it. "Ruskav," Threx said quietly, his voice shaking. "Let her go." "What? Why?" Ruskav asked, not loosening his grip. "That mark," Threx said. "I've seen it before. On a data file. A classified one." His voice had dropped almost to a whisper, and he kept glancing toward the exit, as if some part of him was already calculating how quickly he could leave without making things worse. Do you know what it means when a hardened mercenary suddenly starts whispering instead of shouting? It means fear has just walked into the room, uninvited. Ruskav scoffed and turned back to Dana, still holding her collar. "You think a tattoo scares me?" he said. "I don't care what gang symbol you're wearing, human." Dana's expression didn't change. "It's not a gang symbol," she said quietly. "It's a rank marker." "Rank of what?" Ruskav sneered. "Of the only unit in the Earth Defense Corps that's never lost a single member in combat," Dana said. "They call us the Tiger Division. And that tattoo means I was the first." The cantina fell into absolute silence, because everyone who had spent time near the outer rim conflict zones had heard whispers about the Tiger Division, stories that sounded too extreme to be true, stories that most species dismissed as exaggerated propaganda from a species too small to matter. But Threx wasn't dismissing anything. His hand was already reaching for his weapon, not to attack, but out of pure instinct to protect himself. Ruskav still didn't let go. Pride, or maybe stupidity, kept his grip locked on her collar. "I don't believe old spacer legends," he said, sneering. "Whatever you were, you're nothing now. Just a woman sitting alone in a bar, about to learn her place." Dana tilted her head slightly, and for the first time, something shifted behind her eyes. Not anger, not fear, but a kind of tired patience. The look of someone who had explained this exact mistake to far too many people before. "You should have asked why I was sitting alone," she said. "Nobody sits alone on this station unless the rest of the room already knows better than to bother them." Ruskav's grip finally loosened, just slightly, confusion creeping into his expression. That hesitation was all Dana needed. In one fluid motion, faster than anything the cantina's patrons could clearly track, Dana twisted out of Ruskav's grip, caught his outstretched arm, and redirected his own momentum into the table behind him. With splintered, glass shattered, Ruskav's massive frame crashed through the furniture and hit the floor hard enough to shake the room. The two remaining brawn froze. Do you know what happens in the half-second after violence erupts faster than anyone expected? Everyone in the room recalculates who the dangerous one actually is. Dana stood over Ruskav, her posture relaxed, as if she'd simply reached across the table for her drink instead of throwing a heavily armored mercenary across the room. Ruskav groaned and tried to push himself up, reaching for the pistol at his hip. He never got the chance. Dana's boot came down on his wrist, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to make the message unmistakably clear. "Don't," she said simply. Vas Cadden, the cantina owner, had been frozen behind the bar this entire time, his three eyes wide. He'd seen bar fights before, dozens of them, hundreds even, but nothing had ever ended in 4 seconds flat. Threx, the younger brawn, slowly raised both hands, palms open. "We didn't know," he said. "We didn't know who you were." "Most people don't," Dana said. "That's usually how it stays until someone makes a mistake like your friend just did." She released her boot from Ruskav's wrist and stepped back, giving him room to sit up, groaning, cradling his bruised pride more than any actual injury. "The Tiger Division," Threx said, still staring at the tattoo. "They said you people don't retreat, ever. Even when the mission's already lost." "That's the reputation," Dana said simply. "Is it true?" Dana was quiet for a moment before answering. "We were sent to hold a listening post on Kelov Station during the Doran incursion 3 years ago," she said. "Command told us to abandon it. Said it wasn't worth the losses." "What happened?" Vas asked from behind the bar, unable to stop himself from asking. "We held it anyway," Dana said. 14 of us against a force that should have wiped us out in the first hour. We didn't have the numbers. We didn't have the firepower. We just decided we weren't leaving." The comms recordings from that day, she explained, had later become required listening for every new recruit entering the division. Not because of anything tactical worth studying, but because of how calm every voice on that channel stayed, even as the situation grew more desperate by the minute. No one panicked. No one begged for extraction. They simply kept adjusting, kept holding, kept finding another way to survive the next 5 minutes. Do you know why humans sometimes choose to stand and fight when every calculation says they should run? Because sometimes the calculation isn't the only thing that decides the outcome. "How many of you survived?" Threx asked quietly. "All 14, Dana said. "That's why they call us the ones who don't lose people. Not because we're the strongest fighters in the galaxy. Because we don't leave each other behind, and somehow that's enough more often than it should be." Ruskav finally managed to sit up fully, still rubbing his wrist, staring at Dana with an expression that had shifted from aggression to something closer to grudging respect. The kind brawn culture reserved only for those who had genuinely earned it. "You could have killed me," he said. "Why didn't you?"
Dana shrugged.
"Because you're not actually my enemy," she said. "You're just someone who made a bad read on a quiet night. That's a mistake. It's not a war." She reached down and offered Ruskav her hand. For a long moment the massive brawn just stared at it. "Do you know what it means when a warrior culture that respects nothing but strength chooses to accept help from someone who just beat them? It means they've decided that strength alone was never the whole story. Ruskav took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. I have heard of your Tiger Division, he admitted, brushing broken glass off his armor. I thought the stories were exaggerated for effect. Most legends are. Most are, Dana agreed. This one just happens to be mostly true. Word of what happened in that cantina spread across Velkara 9 within hours, and from there it spread further station to station, ship to ship, the way stories do when they're too strange to keep quiet. By the time the story reached a KRYLL intelligence officer stationed 3 sectors away, it had already picked up embellishments, exaggerations, details that shifted with every retelling. But the core of it stayed the same in every version. A lone human woman had taken down 3 armed mercenaries in a bar without drawing a weapon, and the moment anyone recognized the mark on her arm, the entire situation had reversed itself completely. The KRYLL officer, a cautious analyst named Rhett Hisvor, pulled up the classified file Threx had mentioned, the one buried deep in cross-species intelligence archives, rarely accessed, mostly because nobody outside the Earth Defense Corps had ever verified its contents. He'd expected another dead end, another rumor that would collapse under scrutiny the way most galactic legends did once someone actually checked the primary sources. He'd seen dozens of similar files over his career, each one eventually traced back to exaggerated soldiers' tales or outright propaganda designed to inflate a weaker species' reputation. What Rhett has found made him sit back in his chair. The Tiger Division wasn't propaganda. It wasn't exaggeration. It was real, and it was small, fewer than 200 active members across all of Earth's forces, each one selected not for raw physical power, but for something the files simply labeled as sustained will under total mission failure conditions. In plain terms, it meant the same thing Dana had said in that cantina. They didn't know how to give up, even when giving up was the only reasonable choice. Rhett has flagged the file for his superiors, adding a note that would eventually work its way up through several layers of KRYLL military command. Recommend reclassifying Human Ground Forces threat assessment. Current models may be underestimating psychological resilience factors by a significant margin. Meanwhile, back on Velkara 9, Dana returned to her original table, picked her drink back up from the wreckage of broken furniture, and finished it, unbothered, as station security finally arrived to survey the damage. The security officer, a Vex-3 administrator named Corlin Dessa, took one look at the scene 3 Braun mercenaries standing sheepishly near a shattered table, and one human sitting calmly with a drink in hand, and sighed. Do I need to file a report on this? Corlin asked. No report needed, Ruskav said before Dana could answer. Misunderstanding. Already resolved. Corlin raised an eyebrow, glancing between the massive, battle-scarred brawn and the quiet human woman who barely came up to his shoulder. Resolved how? Corlin asked. She resolved it, Ruskav said simply, and left it at that. Do you know what it means when someone who nearly attacked you refuses to even file a complaint against the person who beat them? It means they've learned something about themselves they're not ready to say out loud. Corlin didn't push further. He'd been working the station long enough to know when a story wasn't worth digging into, and he had a strange feeling that whatever had actually happened here was bigger than a simple bar dispute. Vas Cadden, still shaken but recovering his composure, approached Dana's table cautiously. Your drinks are on the house, he said, for the rest of your stay. That's not necessary, Dana said. It is, Vas insisted. Word's going to spread about what happened here regardless of what I do. Might as well make sure people remember I treated you right. Dana allowed herself a small smile at that. Smart business, she said. Survival instinct, Vas corrected. Same thing most days. 3 days later, a diplomatic shuttle arrived at Velkara 9 carrying an Earth Federation liaison, a mid-level officer named Commander Elias Frayne, who had been dispatched the moment reports of the incident reached Earth's Outer Sector Command. He traveled faster than protocol usually allowed, skipping 2 scheduled stops along the way, because the messages coming from Earth Command had carried a tone he rarely heard from his superiors, something closer to controlled alarm than routine concern. Whatever had happened on the station, they wanted eyes on it immediately, and they wanted it handled by someone who understood exactly how fragile Earth's careful diplomatic balancing act with the wider galaxy actually was. He found Dana in the same cantina, at the same table, as if she'd never left. "You know this caused a stir," Elias said, sitting down across from her without waiting for an invitation. "I know," Dana said. "The KRYLL are asking questions. So are the Vexthari. Even the Doran Empire sent a quiet inquiry through back channels, trying to figure out if the Tiger Division stories are real." "They're real," Dana said simply. "I know they're real," Elias said. "That's not the problem. The problem is that for years, we've kept the division quiet on purpose. Small numbers, minimal exposure, no confirmation to outside species. And now a bar fight on a neutral trading station just blew that secrecy wide open." Dana finally set down her drink and looked at him directly. "Would you rather I'd let him drag me out of here to make an example of me?" she asked. Elias was quiet for a moment. "No," he admitted. "I wouldn't." "Then the secrecy was always going to end eventually," Dana said. "Better it ends because someone underestimated one of us in a bar, than because an entire fleet underestimated all of us in open combat. Do you know why the most dangerous kind of confidence is the kind that never needs to be proven with force first? Because it means the proof was always going to come, one way or another. The only real choice was picking the moment." Elias sat back, considering her words. "Command's going to want a full report," he said. "Probably a formal statement too. This isn't staying contained to one trading station anymore." "I figured," Dana said. "Are you ready for that kind of attention?" Dana glanced down at the tiger tattoo on her forearm, the amber eyes catching the low cantina light exactly as they had 3 days earlier. "I've been ready since the day I earned this mark," she said. "The galaxy's just catching up." Within weeks, the story of Velcara 9 had traveled through half a dozen major systems, discussed in council chambers, intelligence briefings, and diplomatic circles that had never previously spared much thought for Earth's military capabilities. Analysts across multiple empires began quietly revising their threat assessments, unwilling to admit publicly how badly they'd underestimated a species they'd long dismissed as fragile and unremarkable. Trade negotiators who once haggled aggressively over Earth's resource contracts suddenly found themselves adopting a noticeably more careful tone. The Tiger Division, once a quiet, almost mythical rumor, was now a confirmed reality that every major galactic power had to factor into their calculations. And at the center of it all was a single tattoo, and the quiet woman who had never intended to prove anything to anyone that night. She'd simply been trying to finish her drink in peace. But sometimes that's exactly how legends begin. Not with grand declarations or planned demonstrations of power, but with someone underestimating the wrong person, in the wrong bar on the wrong night. And once the truth came out, there was no putting it back. Because now, across 100 different systems, whenever someone saw a stranger sitting quietly alone, minding their own business, a new kind of caution started to spread. They started checking for the tattoo first. And more often than not, by the time they noticed it, it was already too late to matter, because the only people who ever needed to worry about that mark were the ones who'd already made the mistake of underestimating what stood in front of them.